Welcome again. My name is Nathaly Agosto Filión, and I am newly joining you here as your Chief Sustainability Officer. Thank you. So happy to have this wonderful crowd in the room to do this sustainability kickoff. And as you know, there's inclement weather on the way, and the mayor has to run off to a press conference to tell people to abide the rules and be good neighbors. And so recognizing that, I want to go ahead and turn over the floor to him as quickly as possible to give a few remarks. I did want to say before we start that my goal here is that if there are any questions that folks have on the floor that I'm not able to address or that the mayor's not able to address, there are index cards at the table, and if you write down that question for me and we're unable to get to it, I will do my best to get those answers back to you using a web page that we just started. And with no further ado, I just want to welcome the Honorable Mayor J. Baraka.
Good. So first, I just want to welcome again and congratulate Nathaly. She's been doing an outstanding job already in a brief period of time, running around trying to get us all to work together and be together around the issue. I know that's hard, especially in this place. I believe completely that all of the work that we're doing in the city, trying to reduce crime, create jobs, develop housing for folks in the community, everything that we're doing has a direct relationship with sustainability and sustainable communities. We believe that all of those are integrated in a kind of holistic way. It's difficult to get everybody to see that because you're doing so many different things and everybody is working so hard in the areas that concern them. Very often they don't get an opportunity to see how all of their work is related to one another. And we think that having an Office of Sustainability and having a sustainability officer will allow us the opportunity to create a platform where all of this work that's going on across the city has a chance to come together and work together and provide a kind of collective and holistic approach to move Newark forward. We believe that, and I'm clear that that's actually what we're going to do here in the city. I know for a long time people have been trying to get a sustainability officer in our city, to sustain our sustainability officer in the city, to find dollars and everything that we need and resources to make that happen. And we're still not completely where we need to be, but we're definitely better off today than we were yesterday. And we're going to continue to push forward until we get to that place where we have a full operating staff in a sustainability office that works all the time with every project that's going on in the city to make sure that it keeps human capital in mind. Because the most important resource is human resource and the quality of life that we get to live here in this city. And it's hard to balance all of those things. When you need development, when you need housing, when you need jobs, and to create these kinds of things, sometimes they seem contradictory to one another, or they seem as opposing forces. It's important for us to provide some kind of balance so that when we're doing these things, we have a conscience, we have a direction that says, while we need to do that, we need to do it in a very clean and holistic way so we don't create another problem while we're trying to solve one. And there are three basic kind of things that we're working on, that we're prioritizing this time around. Doesn't mean these are the only things that we're going to be focused on, and I'm sure Nathaly to get into it a little deeper. One is the stormwater management or community greening. You know our city floods all the time when it rains. We have a lot of concrete in our city and steel and mortar, and we need more open space and we need more green infrastructure, but we also need to manage our stormwater, right? We need to create what we are trying to do, stormwater fees and all kinds of things to make sure that we manage the stormwater, that we deal with it in a way that our community is not drowning, but actually living. We also have, we want to focus on our code enforcement, environmental code enforcement, right? We want to be able to stop our city from being a dumping ground of illegal dumping, not just the kind of physical debris, but all kinds of dumping in terms of the air and other kind of quality of life that deteriorates because people come to Newark and use our city as a garbage dump. right? So we obviously need to focus hard on code enforcement and create the kind of resources to get more code enforcement officers and do what we need to do to deal with that. And then finally, I want to be able to empower the young people to create, in our sustainability officers, some sustainability leaders, some young people in the city who take on the idea of sustainability, who can incorporate all of the things that they're fighting for and doing in this city and see how having a sustainable city agrees with their kind of advocacy that they're doing every single day. And I think if young people take on the mantle of illegal dumping, if young people take on the mantle of, let's keep our air clean, let's make sure we green the space, or let's create jobs using a better ecosystem. If the young people take that on, I think it goes a longer way, and we add a larger voice to it. So we are going to be definitely committed to bringing young people in and making sure they're a part of this process, right? Unfortunately, I have to go downstairs and deal with something I do not like, which is the storm that's coming. And despite what they say in D.C., there is a such thing as climate change. Maybe they're not clear, but hopefully maybe we can send Nathaly down there but ultimately we're dealing with these things in these cities. We have to deal with it in a very real way. So let me get downstairs and make sure the folks know what it is that we have to do. But I want to thank everybody for coming out and being a part of what we're doing today. This is our kickoff, and we're going to be doing a lot of events in the city, and hopefully you'll be a part of them. Thank you.
Thank you again. So the other piece that I wanted to sort of acknowledge is that there is an incredible wealth of knowledge, of passion, of commitment, of activism, of just, frankly, a level of get it done and intuitiveness that just is striking. It's been an incredibly wonderful experience for me. I've been on board for, 13 weeks or something like that. And I'm constantly, even just yesterday, I was sort of re-reviewing the Sustainability Action Plan that so many of you in the room here helped to draft in 2012, 2013. And even before then, the Green Future Summit in 2007, 2008. It's striking how much has been happening here, and I really want to sort of acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge that this kickoff and the sort of series of events that are coming after here are trying to very intentionally tie not only that sort of history of the grassroots activism, the environmental justice activism, the sort of sustainability groundswell with this sort of youth leadership handoff, not necessarily a full handoff, but sort of doing those things in tandem. So among the folks that this kickoff is going to be organized with include the Newark Youth Ambassadors. So, heyo, say hello. They're here in the room with us today and greeted so many of you. Also our environmental commissioners, anyone who is presently or has been an environmental commissioner, will you stand up and take a short bow? Please take a seat. Yeah, don't be shy. And then we also have this newly formed group that we're calling the Newark Green Team. I don't know if the name will stick, but that's what it is at the moment. And it's really a cross-discipline, multi-sectoral, collaborative effort to say, let's bring all of these different disciplines that the mayor referred to, all of these different types of activities that relate to sustainability, environmental health, which is so front and center here in Newark, but also the things that are maybe a little more in the back of people's brains, like bicycling to work or telecommuting or those kinds of things that also have to do with sustainability, bringing them all to the table to sort of advance and create a collective vision for how we move forward. And that Newark Green Team members who want to stand up and say hello, just stand up, take a bow. It's a good number of you here. So in the next, I'm going to say sort of like 3 to 6 months, the plan is to do a 5-ward tour where the mayor and I and a number of folks that are sort of based in the communities go out and do an event that's appropriate for that community. So in some, it might be a Saturday, there might be kids' activities, and others it might be a church basement, and others it might be the senior center. It really depends on where we're gonna get the most voices in the room. And part of the reason that you all got those little slips at the beginning is that we're gonna sort of test a real-time polling software that I hope doesn't crash and burn and put egg in my face right at the moment. We're going to test that just in a bit. The last thing that I wanted to acknowledge before turning to that sort of real live feedback moment is this issue of sort of telling ourselves how far we've come and also where we need to be, and being transparent and accountable to the commitments that we've made to ourselves. I've made reference to the Sustainability Action Plan before. There's I think it's like 57 individual actions, many of which are actually compound actions in and of themselves, of activities that we wanted to see ourselves do within a 5-year timeline. That clock is ticking, and now more than ever, right? It was published in 2013, which means that by the end of this calendar year, the hope is that we get through as many of those as possible. And I'd like for us to, in this sort of shared process of soliciting more feedback and doing a refresh, also being sure to be grounded in the commitments that we've made and seeing how far we've come and where there's still work to do. And frankly, picking the ones that we can get done in the short term and moving with that. The sort of 4th priority area that the mayor didn't address directly is this issue of creating a base for sustainability performance measurement, which is basically, it could be a glorified spreadsheet or it could be a very sort of intensive and robust process. And regardless, the goal is to create that accountability and create a system by which we're doing that. And so that's something that we're also getting technical expertise from partners from, and sort of working through a good system for doing that. So I had planned to sort of move straight into this feedback form, but I figured I'd just sort of give a break and see if there were any initial reactions from folks in the room or any quick questions that folks wanted to pose. Otherwise, we can run straight into this, and obviously there's time for questions afterwards as well. All right, well, let's just see. If folks did not get the little instructional, the very first piece you need to do Okay, so the instructions are right at the top of the screen here, but I'll just read it out loud. The very first thing you need to do is tell your smartphone or even your old school flip phone. All you need is to be able to text. Yeah, I hear you, I see you. You need to text it this word, Newark Sustai 807, and text that to the number 22333. Once you do that, and if you do it correctly and spell this very strange series of letters and numbers in the right order, you will get an alert saying you are now tied. Are there any folks that are still working on that I should give a minute or two? Oh, hey, people are following the instructions. So at least one person has answered. Now we're up to 2. So go ahead, and the next step is to text one of these answers. And I'm aiming to get to Israel. How many of those papers did we give out? Did we give them all out? You just text A, B, C, D, or E. So I'm just going to give it a few more seconds. I actually don't quite know how to tell how many people have answered. This is me working out the kinks to decide if this is a good tool to use when we do the rest of the tour. Let me not get in front of the speakers. All right, let's go ahead and give it a pause, and it might tweak a little bit, but it looks like of the folks in the room, close to a third of you have been doing this work, sustainability activities, however you define that, for about 1 to 4 years. And you're roughly evenly split between folks who have been doing this 10 plus or just started in the last 12 months. I am gonna count up and add up how many years of sustainability activity this equals for all of us in the room. I'm sure it's gonna be centuries. Fantastic, let's go to the next question. Showing you the back. Okay, same set of instructions. You're going to say A, B, C, or D. A means that sustainability means quality of life to you. B means that sustainability means a clean environment. C means that sustainability means affordability. And D refers to folks who think of sustainability as something other than those 3 prompts. Sure, obviously this is not rigorous, like statistically valid polling here, where we'll do that for the next round. Poll is full and no longer accepting responses. So we hit the cap of the free version of this software, which I think is like 25 or 40. I'm not quite sure. I haven't quite figured that out. But it looks like the majority of folks really think of sustainability as being a clean environment. And the close contender is other, which Anna has proposed means everything, all the above. I'm okay with that definition. I like it. Oh God, I'm struggling. Okay, you guys are just gonna have to look behind the curtain. I don't know where I put the thingy. Okay, we talked about 4 priority areas earlier, which include community greening, work around green stormwater management, tracking and improving sustainability performance, empowering youth to be sustainability leaders, or sort of tackling down on environmental code enforcement. If you had to prioritize these, what would you give them? Did I start it? Oh, I don't know how to answer this one. I'm gonna skip it because I did a poor job of creating this slide. All of the above is a proposal in the room. Okay, this is a word cloud-based question, which basically means that just say the word that answers the question. What one word comes to mind for you in terms of challenges Newark faces in the realm of sustainability? And the system will populate a word cloud. So I know this is really hard to do. If you think about challenges related to sustainability in Newark, what is one word that does that for you? Oh, doesn't this feel familiar? Okay, communication, money, see if they feel like contenders there, between the 2 things there. Oh, policy is getting on up there. The system will give us a prompt when the poll is full. So we have word clouds basically say that the number of people who said the word, the bigger that word is. So folks have sort of populated a bunch of words, but the ones that came up most commonly include policy, money, polluters, and communication. And I'll have to look at the back end to see if the coloration means anything, but money is in a different color, which might mean something very specific. We all know that problem. So this is the same one, but flipped on its head. And I think it's our last question. Actually, it's not quite, but what one word, again, just one word, comes to mind in terms of opportunities and goals for Newark in the realm of sustainability? Oh, wow. Health is a really strong frame for a lot of folks. So just to put it out there for the people that maybe can't read very well, some of the other words that are coming up is awareness, organizing, regeneration, food, vehicles, engagement, collaboration, resilience, liberation, community, partnerships, progressive, commitment, infrastructure looks like it's the second biggest word, and resilience. And then the last one is really just kind of basic question, but it's good to hear from you all. Should we use this tool again? Maybe after I work out the kinks, like priority ordering. Nobody's answering, just 111%? How did that happen? Oh, okay. I'm gonna need to follow up with someone. Ask more information. You know, I understand that the challenge with a tool like this is that you need an audience that's comfortable texting, right? So one of the thoughts is to use this for sort of real time, folks in the room and feeling folks out. And obviously we'll sort of gut check this with the sort of little planning committee that'll form between the Newark Green team, the Newark Youth Ambassadors, and folks on the Environmental Commission that, you know, serve as liaisons for their wards. But we need to sort of create additional methodologies that allow us to capture, maybe in just paper format, those concepts as well from folks so that we can have that feed into a process. But overwhelmingly, folks sort of like the idea of using something like this, and I think that it works for sort of adults that have cell phones. We would need something for younger youth as well to add their opinions. But that's basically this tool. I'm just gonna turn it off. And that leads us to sort of the open question period. And I'm not sure if we have another microphone. I didn't ask that question ahead of time. Just this one, Will? Just the one? That's fine. Okay, I'm gonna just come over to you. Please stand up, say your name. No. The camera wants to get you.
Oh, okay. Oh, God, that's loud. So I've seen in other states around the United States that they have plants in their, like, around their water filtration, like their sewage systems. And I just wanted to propose that as an idea for Newark to help not only spread awareness of, you know, keeping Newark green, but also kind of combining the whole no dumping, because we could put signs and say these plants are for the water filtration, this is what benefits it and stuff like that.
So sort of going beyond the idea of rain gardens, but also something like physically in the wastewater treatment facility.
It's kind of like
living machines. Yeah. Living machines, yeah. One of my professors is the inventor of living machines, and they're incredible. I think they're amazing, and they're really hard to manage, but they're also incredibly well engineered. I love that idea. It'd be really cool to see John Todd, what's his name? It'd be really cool to sort of reach out and see if he has any, specifically urban applications. And I know that when it comes to sort of brownfield remediation, it's also a really interesting strategy for having basically mushrooms and fungi do an incredible job of capturing toxins in the soil. So there's sort of an interesting, thanks for that idea. Yeah. Other questions?
How can Newark residents and supporters of Newark help the city of Newark in the green goals that they want to accomplish? What are some of the things that you really want to get the word out to Newark residents around the city about the ways that they can get involved?
Absolutely. Is Michael Molina or Pamela Daniels here? Pamela, why don't you say a few words about the Quality of Life Summit?
Looks like I just got here on time. Sorry, I'm late. To go over here? Okay. So the question was about, hi everyone, good evening. The question was about how residents can get involved. Is that what I'm hearing? So I'm Pamela Daniels. I'm the Assistant Executive Director of Unified Vailsburg Services. We are a nonprofit community development corporation in the West Ward of Newark. But I also serve as the chairperson of, or co-chair of the Newark Dig Quality of Life Subcommittee. And so one of the things that we're working on in that subcommittee is a Quality of Life Summit, starting with the fact that really trying to make a basic correlation between sustainability and quality of life and how those two definitions are really one and the same. And then really trying to access residents who are not already involved in some of the great work that's already happening on the ground. So the summit tentatively will be in June, and we really are trying to, number one, introduce a lot of the amazing resources in a ward sense to people of the community, whether you're getting involved because you're just fed up with the dumping that's going on your block, or you know that the recycling program in a local institution isn't as strong, whether it's a school, isn't as strong as it should be, and so recycling is really the issue that you want to work on. I mean, topically, there are so many great things happening. I see Ms. Brenda here, who's a recycling coordinator here for the city, and every October there's an amazing event that happens, Slam Dunk the Junk, which is reiterating those points about both littering as well as recycling. And so a lot of these things that are happening are just not necessarily communicated in a very broad way or a very relatable way. And so the ideas of the summit is to really amp up, the conversations that are happening, and really just make sure across the city and every ward folks know who and what they can connect to on the ground right now that's moving a lot of these agendas forward. So,
thank you. Good. Thank you so much. So recently, the city of Newark submitted an application for a $20,000 grant, about at least half of which would go to actually planning the Quality of Life Summit, to having that be something that's got a really great attendance. There's actually a committee of folks, of which Pamela's chairing that in partnership with Michael Molina of the Ironburn Community Corporation. Basically, a committee working through the best ways to get youth in the door, to get residents, folks who aren't like the choir, because when we looked at the number of years for the folks in the room, it's not unfair to say that you all are the folks that are here because you've been doing this. This is your blood, sweat, and tears, and you care deeply about this work, and you come out on a night where you probably should be, I don't know, buying up hurricane supplies or whatever it is that we do when a blizzard's coming. I lived in Vermont for 8 years, so like, come on, guys. But anyways, in any case, that event is something we'll know within about a month if we got those dollars in the door, and regardless, the city's really wanting to support the community in doing that. The other thing that I would ask is if people make sure to sign up. I want to have this webpage be a way of not only uplifting the work that's happening across the wards, across all the neighborhoods in the community, but also sort of drawing attention to opportunities to engage. And I know that the Newark Green team is really trying to focus on improving that communications challenge that came up, improving communication between these organizations that are often doing work, frankly, in silos, because it's so hard to communicate, not because anyone's sort of malicious about it, but because for whatever reason, there's a week in October that's the best and everyone wants to plan an event on, right? We don't want to conflict or work across purposes with ourselves in moving this work forward. Sorry, just one more thing, EJ. Yes, sign up, go to the event. Okay, there's probably something else and I don't remember what it is, but I'm sure you all can think of other things. Ijoma?
I just wanted to know what outreach are you guys doing to let everybody in the city know what's going on, because a lot of times these programs come out and this comes out, something new is going on in the city, but people don't really hear about it. So what are you guys doing to get the word out?
So I am trying to build up, to repeat the question for anyone who might not have caught it, about the efforts to spread this word and make sure that it is getting out to the right people. I'm trying to build up an email list. Farther away. Farther away? Is that what you're saying? I don't. What are you saying? Okay. I'm trying to build up the community list, the email list, but I think, like I said before, for example, I'm thinking ahead about Earth Week and Earth Day and all of the activities going to be bubbling up. Like, how do we make sure that everyone knows all of the things that are happening and not just one or two? And the groups that are sort of more organic and more, new on the scene, make sure that they can also tap into that audience of supporters and newbies. And I think part of that comes to this question of messaging, because what I've noticed in just advertising this event for the last few weeks is that sustainability doesn't mean anything for the people who don't know, for which sustainability doesn't mean something. I didn't deliver that very well. Sustainability means something to a specific audience, and for everyone else, it can mean anything. And so being really cognizant of the way you frame the message, the way you communicate it in a way that resounds so that folks understand it's about the fact that there's litter on the ground, on the block that you're walking your kid to school every day, and that if we're not more on top of that through our environmental code enforcement activities or any number of things that's tied to sustainability. It's also about creating green economic opportunities so that folks that are looking for work, let's say from the reentry community, formerly incarcerated folks, can have an opportunity to be installing the solar panels that we might put up in some municipal buildings over the next decade. It's all of those things combined. I saw 2 hands, and I'm just gonna bring them.
Hi everyone, I'm a mechanical engineering student from NJIT, and I just wanted to know how engineers such as myself can contribute to sustainability in Newark. What kind of research or projects are necessary? Yeah, sure. So I'm an engineer at NJIT, a student actually, and I wanted to know how engineers such as myself can contribute to projects, design, or research that's necessary for sustainability in Newark.
Awesome. I love that question. I learned that the hard way. So there are a couple things that come to mind, but one thing is that what I've learned from Deborah Greenwood's group is called the Newark Environmental Sustainability Institute. Did I get that right? Is Deb here? Yes, I got it right at least. So she did a summit last October, and as part of it, her goals was to hear from community groups. A lot of the folks in this room probably were part of that summit, what the needs were among the groups doing environmental work in Newark. And one of the things that came up is that folks really need interns. They really need that passion, that knowledge, and that sort of will to engage in data analytics and in research, et cetera, to advance their work. And so she's actually doing some fundraising herself and also trying to do more work to place interns in organizations that need that help. The other thing that I'll mention is that there are internship opportunities that are funded through the New Jersey Higher Education Partnership for Sustainability, NJHEPS. Those are available. This is the second year. The city actually applied to get those interns and just learned that we will have a placement of 5 students. Coincidentally, they are also called a green team, so I'll have to figure out how to message them. But that's a group of students who are being placed with the city specifically to help advance work. I think the engineering piece is really interesting because there are so many. We're a city that's working on our infrastructure, not only the green infrastructure, the stormwater infrastructure, but thinking about the layouts of our roads. We've got a complete streets policy that encourages people to recognize that streets are not just for cars, they're for pedestrians, they're for seniors, they're for bikes, etc. And that comes from folks that are engineers by training, right? We don't often think about them doing the sort of lovey-dovey sustainability stuff, right? It's got this perception of being sort of a little fuzzy, but we need engineers doing the specifics of this. And frankly, my background is in climate adaptation, and when I think about the challenges that we might face as being a community that is tidally influenced by the ocean and sea level rise, those are also engineering challenges. At the end of it, we need to be able to convert the way we currently space our pipes, for example, to the way we need to in the face of the unpredictability that, I'm sure there are a bunch of folks who are climate deniers who will take the winter weather and say, oh, global warming isn't happening, ha ha ha, but it's really climate weirding. It's what we're seeing is that things are happening in ways that it's very hard to anticipate. So all of that, requires the student energy. There was a question in the back.
Thank you, ma'am, for your shared insight on the sustainability. Just a quick question, and it's a 2-part question. One is, in terms of sustainability standards and the standards that the EPA kind of requires on municipalities, how do we well, how does a municipality maintain a green component to development plans that they may do for an area like the Bergen Street Development Plan in the South Ward, where I happen to be a district leader, and I want to eventually see the local residents be able to have an employment opportunity once the development takes place. There's a proposal for a green gas station, but after doing the tireless homework of it, I'm seeing the amount of EPA regulations for the brownfields, as far as brownfield standards. How much more will the EPA require of Newark so that businesses can come in eventually and participate in the development plans from a green perspective? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate our current water system in terms of sustainable, as far as it being sustainable or not, if I could, because we got an engineer in the room.
The second question is actually, easier because I don't have a good way to rate the current water system. I mean, it's not my expertise, and I would be really interested to find out if there are standards that exist from a sustainability perspective. I certainly know that there are organizations that form as associations of water managers, and that I know of from tackling the sort of the drought challenge in arid western states related to climate change. But from a sustainability perspective, it's not just climate change, obviously. There's a bunch of things that you want to consider relative to your water system. Obviously, we're concerned about lead. We're concerned about, availability. We're concerned about drought issues, all sorts of other things. So I'll take that one first. In terms of the question that you addressed about standard setting, I think of it in two parts. The first is that in 2016, we, through the hard work of a number of folks here in the room for many, many years, were able to finally pass an environmental justice cumulative impacts ordinance. And I will give a moment for the co-chair of our environmental commission to share a few words about that. I'm warning you ahead of time to share a little bit more information, because I'm coming to realize that this event is offering an opportunity for educating and continuing to provide a communications platform among ourselves. The second piece is actually something where through a partnership with the EPA, with the regional office, there's an effort, and actually these are conversations that I'm having with a few different people in different ways. It would be really nice to have a kind of workshop where the folks on the ground, the grassroots folks that are thinking about remediation, that are thinking about brownfields, that are thinking about toxics, whether they're in the air, in the water, in the soil, kind of understand the regulations. That's something that I myself am struggling with, because we're regulated by EPA, we're regulated from a health perspective, we're regulated by the DEP. Obviously, the city has mandates, policies, ordinances in place for different things. And internally, part of that environmental code enforcement priority includes understanding that universe of overlapping ways of dealing with these challenges, and parsing out where we as a city can pull the lever the best. Because there are some that are just outside of our control, and there are some where we can sort of reinforce the work that's happening. And that's an activity that I hope to do over the next several months. In fact, it's the first working group, internal interdepartmental working group that I've started, including representatives from engineering, health and community wellness, and actually the law department, to get at some challenges in terms of the local and state regulations around fines and regulations. So that's one part of it, is understanding that crazy network. And then the other thing that I'll say when it comes to standards is that there are a number of organizations that do sort of recognition programs where you can meet a standard set by that organization, often the leader in their field. So an example that I'll offer is the U.S. Green Building Council's lead for buildings. So we've got a number of buildings I think it's like 50 maybe, I might be wrong. If Rob Thomas is here, he might know the exact number, in the city of Newark that are accredited as LEED. So that means that they've met a third-party verified standard for being sustainable in any number of different sort of ways that you can be sustainable. The sourcing of your materials, the way you recycle your construction, demolition materials, the way you source your water, etc. Another example of that kind of thing is for us locally here to maybe do some kind of like buy local, local sourcing or green business recognition, where we sort of vote with our dollars, and the way we, this community of people who care about this stuff, continues to sort of push the business community to create the products that we want to see. So it's sort of very different answers to the question, but there's a bunch of different ways to tackle something like what you've addressed, which is really a big challenge for our community, is remediating our brownfields and holding ourselves to a higher standard for environmental performance. So I'm looking at the time, and I want to maybe give an opportunity for Cynthia Mejon to share a little bit about the Environmental Justice Ordinance. Would you mind coming up here? Thank you so much.
Hi, good evening. So I am privileged to be one of the two co-chairs of the Newark Environmental Commission. Newark didn't have an environmental commission until about 2009, even though most municipalities in New Jersey did. That ordinance that enables communities to have an environmental commission goes back to the 70s. So we have I've recently learned that certainly not all states have them. We have an opportunity in being able to have something like that to move a lot of issues forward. All of the people on the Environmental Commission are volunteers. All of them are Newark residents. Each of us was appointed by the mayor or by a council person, and then we never talked to those folks again. So we're in many ways very independent and very principled. I'm very proud to serve with all of the people that are working with us. We've come to a really unique moment in Newark. For 9 years, there's a group of people, and one of them just left. I was hoping she would stay. There's a group of people that formed the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, which is, when we talk about environmental justice, we're talking about communities that are overburdened. All of Newark is officially classified as an environmental justice community because we are overburdened with polluting practices and legacy pollution and plants. So the bulk of that is in the East Ward, but it affects everyone, and the air goes everywhere. So we're always affected. For 9 years, people on the Alliance, as we call it, worked to have an ordinance passed, and they decided to call it the Cumulative Impacts Ordinance. When we talk about that, we mean the layers, multiple layers of pollution that we experience. An example is that when a company wants to come into Newark, and we've got quite a few of them, that do pollute the air, they do emit pollution, they will say, they have to show how much they're going to emit. And I'm just going to give you an example that's not unrealistic. It would be like 1 million pounds of pollution a year. And so they're within the law to do that. However, we're not taking into account, and there is no way to take into account, that another plant will be producing just as much. So we've doubled our pollution or tripled it. So we're constantly under this burden of pollution. And I like to see it as if the speed limit was 90 miles an hour, none of us would ever get a ticket. We'd all be just zipping along within the law. So we have that to overcome over time. However, the group kept working to get this ordinance passed. They started with the city of Newark. At one point, they tried to get it. I can remember going to the legislature and trying to convince people to take a look at this thing. That did not happen. However, over time and with a lot of work, they managed to get the ordinance kind of polished to the point where it was passable in Newark, and our council passed it. It was passed April a year ago. It went into effect July 27th of this year. What happens with the ordinance means that the Environmental Commission is empowered to review permit requests. When companies come in, they have to get a permit if they're going to be asking for anything that's beyond what's already in law. And it can be quite strict, especially when you look at the zoning laws. So we're certainly not reviewing everything that comes in. We don't look at residential, but if a commercial or an industrial permit is requested and it falls within having to get a permit from the EPA for air or the Department of Environmental Protection, the DEP, or a solid waste permit, then that comes to us. And we've had to learn very quickly how to do these reviews, and I'm thankful for people on the planning staff who are helping us to polish them and make them better and more usable for those boards, because we're real keeners. I mean, we'll just sit down and write 5 pages of text. 2 of us are urban planners, and others of us are just, we have law backgrounds or whatever. But most people that are, we've learned to do this. We're kind of figuring out what those boards can work with, and we are making what we call a courtesy review. However, we take that into the planning and zoning boards, and we do speak on it. We let folks know. The ordinance is broad enough that we can include labor concerns, because there are some facilities and some industries that we know there are problems in around the country. We write that in. We say, keep an eye on this. Keep an eye on temporary employment agencies, because those aren't real jobs. They're not going to turn into good jobs for folks. So we're exhorting the planning and zoning boards to take a high road. And we can. We have that. We are giving of our time and our expertise, because folks have been doing this for a while, to try and push us into a stronger road. So I just came back from Washington, where I gave a workshop on this with the authors of the ordinance at the EPA. It was standing room only. There were like lots and lots of people. We're now working with some people in DC who want to try and get an ordinance like this. So now we have an exportable industry in Newark, very high road environmental ordinances. All of our comments are public record. I'm happy to share them with anybody. We're going to start having them up on our website and on our Facebook, so people can read those and learn what's happening here and how we're commenting on it and what we think is important for the city. So thank you.
And Cynthia's modest, but really it is a national an ordinance of much import. It's one of a kind. There are not other things like this, which is why Newark is being looked at as a model to replicate this environmental justice framed ordinance. Let me get a feel for the room. I know that because of the inclement weather, folks are probably thinking ahead, and I just want to sort of make sure that I'm not, we are scheduled to go till 7, but I'm happy to truncate this a little bit, especially because the mayor wasn't able to stay for as long as he had intended originally. Show hands in the room, folks who have additional questions, want to keep going. Question in the back. Okay. Where's that microphone? Thank you.
Oh, in reference to the water, the rainwater, I've noticed that most floods are caused by clogged sewers. So I was wondering if there's a plan to make that work out better without having to make new infrastructures, but make the infrastructures that we have in place function properly.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly important piece to recognize that if our sewer drains aren't draining as they should, obviously they're not functioning as they should. And this ties very beautifully this challenge of code enforcement and enforcing our litter problems and that of green stormwater infrastructure or just stormwater management. And so absolutely, I 100% agree with that, and I think it's something that we have to tackle together at the same time. I had a question right up here. Thanks.
I just wondered at this point, because the city is kind of a model for garden development, you see more and more of that happening. If you have stats back from that in terms of community engagement and how that's going.
I have to imagine that there are stats around this. The question had to do with community gardens, urban gardens, small farms. Exactly, yeah. I mean, they really do turn people out. And when I think about the events that I've been to already and answered questions, often it comes back to litter dumping, parks and trees and gardens. Those are like the 3 things that everybody wants to talk about because they're so important to us, individually for, the quality of our own personal lives. I don't know of any stats around how many sort of kids or seniors or whatever. I'm sure that they exist. I just don't know of them. And in the Green Team conversation that happened last week, collecting that information was certainly something that came up. You know, pointing people to farmers market, pointing people to community-supported agriculture programs, pointing people to lower-cost, affordable, organic produce. There was a lot of conversation about better knitting, better tying a lot of the work that's happening at, I mean, there's easily 50 gardens through the city's Adopt a Lot program, more than that. I don't know how many, and that's just, you know, individual vacant lots, right? Some are small, some are big, and in addition to that, there are fairly large size, what you would call urban farms as well, you know, so there's probably statistics for those more well-founded, more well-established areas.
Hi, two, I guess, questions/suggestions. I know you were talking a little bit about all the awesome things that are happening for Earth Week, month, day, whatever it is. It's every day. But one suggestion was, I mean, everybody's talking about, you know, the litter is on the street, the litter is here, the litter is there. Why don't we get, you know, groups of people and, like, put them in, like, this park in the North Ward, this park in the South Ward, all on the same day, and everybody cleans at the same time to kind of educate the community and get the community involved in keeping it green and keeping it clean. The second, I guess, suggestion and part is I can't stress enough how important it is to connect and partner with Newark Public Schools. I am a public school teacher, and I found out about this summit through Brenda Anderson, and this is something that I am passionate about. I know the kids are passionate about having, you know, sustainability representatives in each school. I mean, Newark Public Schools is very enormous, and if we get the children on board, this is their future. This is they are the ones that want to change everything, so get them involved.
100% amen. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
And if you need help, get at me.
Yes, I'm on it. Someone get her name. No, I absolutely agree with you on that. And to the point that you made about sort of getting people out to do cleanups, to do, you know, tree plantings, etc. Actually, maybe just 2 weeks ago, I was pulling my hair out because I had 2 grant deadlines due the same night, and one of them was for $25,000 from Bloomberg Philanthropies for a program called Prepared Together. And we should know within a month or so if we're going to get those dollars in the door, and it is specifically to place Vistas with us. Vistas it's an acronym for Volunteers in Service to America. So it's like the Peace Corps, but it is a domestic program, and folks get placed for 1 year, and through that program they get, you know, scholarship dollars, etc. But in any case, their goal, if we get that award, those award dollars, we would get 2 full-time individuals to help get more people out in the community doing tree plantings, possibly installing green roofs to deal, since it's like a preparedness frame, it's got more of a sort of extreme heat, extreme weather sort of framing to it, but all of this is tied together, just like the person who commented previously in the back about litter in the storm drains and how that causes flooding. Like these are all things that we really hope, I'm really keeping my fingers crossed. If we know that we got those 2 separate grants, we'll know before Earth Day, and then we can make a big splash and celebrate getting some more money in the door to do this work. But on the point about youth, yeah, 100%, yes, let's talk. Shakira?
So, I'm sorry. I just wanted to touch on what you asked about youth being involved with sustainability. So, we are youth representatives for the mayor, and we're called the Newark Youth Ambassadors. So, we're partnered with her, as she was speaking earlier, and we have one for the North, South, East, West, and Central Ward. I am the advisor, and my team members are right here. So, these are young people here today with you guys to show you that young people are involved with sustainability, and we're partnered with the sustainability team to help heal our city and heal our nation. So that's the answer to your question.
Awesome. I think, Basil, did you have a question? There might have been a hand in the back. All right, we got one right here. And then Alexis, I'll have you close out. Well, we got one over here, and then we'll come back to you.
Yes, there is often a misconception that all sustainability efforts are a cost, when from a communication standpoint, it's a good idea to look at those sustainability initiatives that provide a return on investment. Many times people don't pay attention to the environment, but they do pay attention to money, and so sometimes linking that is a good idea.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of opportunities in energy savings, in buttoning up our buildings, these drafty buildings that in the winter months cause us to be freezing and hike energy bills, and we knew statistically that those costs are actually highest among the poorest among us. The folks that live in the worst housing are the ones paying out the wazoo for their energy and still not feeling warm. Still, obviously the city has these warming shelters and in the summer sometimes cooling shelters as well to address this need. There's a huge energy savings there, and actually the city's in the middle of launching a 17 public building contract to button up our municipal, to lead by example. And the idea, the way this is set up, it actually takes a lot of work in the front end to make it happen so that it runs smoothly, but you actually contract a company through an entire bidding process, quite robust, to use the energy savings, and that's how you pay for the capital investment. So it's not at a cost to the city. It's incredibly moving, and Rob Thomas is in the room. I'm not sure he's the mastermind behind that work. We've also been selected by the Department of Energy to be a low-income accelerator. I might have gotten that program name incorrect. I'd have to go back and ask Rob Thomas to clarify. But this is an effort to focus on the fact that we are a community that's predominantly low-income. We have very high poverty statistics, as we all know, and to create programs that support that energy efficiency, the benefits there to go to the folks that most need it, our poorest residents, to have residential energy efficiency efforts and also renewables, where we can create, reduce the barriers to putting a solar panel on a multi-family building, right? Because you can do it if you own your own home, but how many of us own our own homes? That's not a common stat in Newark, frankly. And so we need to overcome the burdens and the challenges related to getting it in the bigger apartment buildings, which is what we have a lot of. So both of those are programs that unfortunately I can't speak to as well, because we have another full-time staff person out of the Department of Engineering who's deep in the weeds in that stuff and has been working on it for years. But I'd be happy to connect you to him for sure. And then Alexis, Trusty, was going to be the last question.
Well, okay, so my question was already answered, Nathaly, but I think you guys are doing a great job. Shakira did a great job with answering it. One of the things I want to say before I end, though, is about greenery and lots, but I don't want to talk about it right now. I think that we talked about it in our office, but we do want to get more lots, and we want to do some greeneries on the lots, and we do want to do some solar panels. So I don't know if we talked about that tonight. Did you touch that? Because I came in late.
Not a whole lot, yeah.
Okay, so that's one of my interests with sustainability and solars. Like, what are your take on it, and what is the city going to do, and how we're going to move forward on that issue?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are these really interesting sort of mapping tools where just using sort of Google Maps and aerial photography, you can see the sort of pitch of different buildings. And there are companies out there who want to capitalize this. They want to monetize our roofs to make energy, right? So we actually get pitched pretty regularly as a city. You could put in this many solar panels, blah, 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 where these, these private companies come in and say, here's an offer. You guys should really do this very cool thing. The challenges are really, the barriers are really, policy related. Like, we need to figure out how to sort of overcome those things and launch and sort of do a lot more in that area. And again, this isn't my area of expertise, so I hope I'm not speaking out of turn when I say it that way. Relative to the gardening efforts, I spoke about it a little bit, but there's a lot of energy. There's a really huge appetite. There's a new group called the Newark Urban Agriculture Alliance, and many individuals who are incredibly passionate about this work, who are trying to create a comprehensive strategy for urban agriculture, for small-scale farming, for more gardening. And they've already been had audience with members of the Economic and Housing Development Group, the department here, which is the one who runs the vacant lots program, the Adopt a Lot program. There's a brochure online where you can read all of the specifics of that, but to sort of share with others, you'd have to start by identifying a vacant lot that's near you. There's not like a city inventory that you just go and say, okay, that's the one that I want because it's the biggest and it's got the best sunlight or whatever. You have to sort of do that work from the get-go yourself, but then there's an opportunity to sort of contract with the city for a 1-year lease. And this group of gardeners who have come together are actually having conversations about extending that lease term. Because as gardeners know, and I'm not a gardener myself, but I tried it and just, it's hard work, frankly. I don't know how you guys consider this leisure. But in any case, as you all know, you really put a lot of work into getting your garden prepared, and to only have it for a year, I think sometimes people get really sad about that. So absolutely an area of conversation that is ongoing, and for which if you have specific interests, you should definitely tie in. There's one very urgent hand right here. Kate, so if we could get the microphone back over to this woman right here. Thanks, Alexis.
Hi, my name is May. I just live in East Brunswick in New Jersey. So you talk about the green, so I want to bring this green. This about the swimming show is about arts and culture. They come into our NJ Park in Newark, this city, in May. So this month is Women's History Month. In May, there will be the Asia Heritage Month. So we want to work with the city and bring the culture, Asian culture, and celebrate the diversity with the city. So I can talk to you later on for more details, something like that.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
Thank you. All right, folks. Well, I want to just close by sharing a few more words about sort of my role so that folks who want to reach me, unfortunately, I'm new enough that I don't even have business cards yet, but I've tried to make it as easy as possible for you to find me. So on the poster and also on the little piece of papers, we might actually have extra copies of the flyer. There's a web address there, and my contact information is on that page. So my job is sort of 50-50. About half of my work is this internal coordination so that, so many of the representatives of staff of city departments that are here, water, sewer, economic and housing development, so many folks that are already in the room, engineering, so that those folks are talking amongst and between themselves. So that's like 50% of the time I'm thinking about doing a better job of us talking within ourselves. And the other half of my work is really trying to be a liaison so that when there are issues that come up in the community, I can be a voice that brings these to the mayor's attention and also that helps problem solve internally. And frankly, because of the sort of hub and spoke wheel of it, I'm very, cognizant of the fact that we need to recognize that due to political transition, as we know, sort of in the national landscape even, having it fully owned by a government can be dangerous, right? So like, I'm a bit of a hub, but I don't want to own it fully. I want to be as transparent and I want to be shared ownership. And so I'm a student of this process in urban cities across the US, and you see it time and time again, unfortunately, that sustainability initiatives led from the city don't always, the city, not Newark, but any city, don't always survive that transition. And so we want to be really cognizant of that and be really shared ownership in the way we do the work. But yeah, that's sort of the other half of my hat. And with that, I will close and invite you all to continue to participate, to sign up, to follow information that's available on this website about the future events. My hope is that by Earth Day, we can advertise when and where those events will be and really start getting the word out and promoting so that we can do a refresh on the Sustainability Action Plan, but also really double down on the commitments we've already made to ourselves and others. Thank you so much for being here.